Awesome to welcome Minnesota State-Mankato head coach Emilee Thiesse to the basketball podcast. Emilee Thiesse has transformed the Minnesota State women's basketball program into an NCAA Division II powerhouse. Under her leadership, the Mavericks clinched their second NCAA Division II Championship during the 2024 season, breaking several team records along the way. Thiesse's tenure boasts an impressive 228 and 116 overall record with 5 NCAA tournament appearances, and her team's consistently ranking among the top in scoring offense and defense. Minnesota State's 2023-24 season saw them achieve a 20-2 conference record, their second NSIC Championship, and their first NSIC Tournament Championship. Thiesse's coaching prowess has been recognized with multiple accolades, including the NSIC Coach of the Year honor. The team broke several team records during their 2023-24 season, including games played, most wins, points scored, field goal attempts, field goals made, field goal attempts, and free throws made, along with the fourth best scoring offense in NCAA Division II at 82.9 points per game. The Mavericks also boasted a smothering defense that ranked second in steals per game, 17.1 a game, second in turnovers forced, 28.05, and first in turnover margin, 13.11. Emilee, welcome to the basketball podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Division II national champion. That sounds pretty cool. How was that experience?
Yeah, that doesn't get old hearing that, and honestly, I feel like we're just starting to near a point where it's like starting to soak in. We've watched our highlight video enough times that it's okay. Yeah, that really happened. And that's been pretty special to have it finally seeming more real, because when you're in the heart of it, it's just trying to stay so present. And I think that was something I never really fully understood until we were there. We have another national championship in our history of our program from 2009. And we would visit with those that were part of that program. And our associate head coach, Amy Sander, was a part of that program. And we would always ask her and ask them questions about, when did you know you could win a championship? And what was it like during that run? And trying to soak in the knowledge that, of the people that had been there. And now sitting in the seat of having been there, there never was a point where it was like, gosh, I think we're going to win the national championship. There was just this point of just feeling so confident and having so much trust in our system and in our players, our team. We were just so poised and so calm through that entire stretch. It just was like, it was almost like an eerie, okay, nobody is feeling nervous at all. And again, I think we just really kept talking about just right now, today, let's just focus on being together today. And so it was just another game from that standpoint. And yeah, and then I think now just finally being able to allow all that excitement to really soak in has been special.
That's so fun. And at least people think it was an overnight success. When you first got the job, some really good early success, and you've been successful your whole time there. So I don't want to paint the picture that you haven't been, but definitely you went through a stretch in your time there where you didn't get to the NCAA tournament a few times. You didn't maybe have that success. So it's almost like early success, then a little bit of build, and then build it all the way back up to this point. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think as coaches, we just talk too much about the fact that, oh, you just go in, you're successful, and you keep being successful. But there's different levels of that, isn't it?
There is. Yeah, I was fortunate to come into a program with a great history. Obviously, again, that '09 national championship team, the cupboards were not bare when I got here. I was lucky to have a ton of talent. We implemented a very new style. I had a group that was eager to learn and was willing to jump right on board with me, and a great supportive staff through that first transition and my first transition as a head coach. And so we had some really good early success, which was very fun. I think it really gave me a lot of confidence as a head coach. But I think my philosophy really developed in those ensuing years there in that middle stretch you talked about, where closer to 500 seasons, or from our stretch of success, probably below what we would have been searching for. And I think a couple things with that. Much about our team right now, we play a lot of players. We have a ton of depth, and that wasn't all that different those early years either. We played a lot of players, but I think during that stretch of mediocre seasons, I don't want to say below average, because we learned a lot and we had really good players in our program. So not taking away from that in any way, but our depth became limited. We were We like to have 17 players on our roster. I think we were closer to like 12 to 13 on our roster at that time. Then you take a couple injuries that happened throughout the year, and we're looking at 8 to 9 healthy kids during certain stretches of the season. And that just isn't our system, isn't our style. And so I think it really reinforced to us recruiting wise, the depth maybe in specific positions, but just the overall depth that we need to have. I think I've maybe grown a lot as a coach in learning how to help my players stay healthier. And I think last year I gave our players more time off than I probably have given my previous years combined, maybe. And just starting to realize like more isn't always more. What we do is so intense and high speed, just everything about it is aggressive that we don't have to go for long stretches. We don't have to go every single day. Being more mindful of like how their bodies are feeling during certain times, or mentally, are we all just a little exhausted after that last road trip? Let's take a little extra time here, and just some of those things. So I think just growing as a coach on the overall perspective of helping to keep my players healthy and eager and excited as we go through the ups and downs of the season. And then I would say too, really about that time was when we really started transforming our defense. And I think, if I'm completely honest, the reason that we transformed our defense was just an overall, I don't know, frustration, or just as coaches feeling like, man, we spend so much time putting the scouting report together. We spend so much time throughout the week, and I'm a very defensive focused coach, like going through what we're going to see and how to defend it and which screens we're going to do this way and that way. And then we get into the game and we're not recognizing this player scout versus that, and so many things. And we were just having a lot of that uncertainty throughout the season. And we just had a point in the season where we just had to draw a line in the sand. And we came in after a weekend, and as I was like, okay, you guys are going to think I'm crazy, but this is what I'm thinking we need to go to defensively. And we just talked about, we're going to cut the court. We're going to push everything to the outside. We're going to know exactly where we want the ball to go. And it's going to take so much of the, okay, who is this player? What's their strength? Oh, wait, is this that screen that I'm supposed to? And we're just going to take that all out. And we're just going to focus on where we want the ball to go. And we're going to commit 100% to making it go there, and then have a rotation from there. And so we talked about it as a staff for hours. We went into that practice on a Monday, and I think my players were looking at me like, and again, at that time, it was like, is this idiocy to just be thinking right now is the time in the middle of the season to scratch everything that you've ever done and start over? But I think in a lot of ways, it was exactly what we needed, because our team had been feeling so uncertain about things that it was just like, that was our rallying point. It was like, this is the way it's going to be. We're all on board with it. Let's make this work. And it just clicked. And we started to really see our team build great momentum in that second half of the season, and just have so much more confidence in each other and what their role was defensively. And I think that was just the defining moment of, okay, here's how we're going to build our identity. This is what's going to focus our recruiting efforts. And again, now adding that with the depth and the other things that we do out there, I think that was what kind of maybe got us back on the right track.
You got back on the right track, and obviously had an incredible season. And let's dive deeper, because again, watching your team play, all these questions will roll into maybe one answer. So let's just lay it out for you. You run motion defense in your terms. Last season, you forced over 1,000 turnovers, 1,038 turnovers off 633 steals. And then your roster depth, which you already mentioned, where you played 12 players playing 28 games or more, which is incredible as a stat as well. So those all roll together in terms of style of play and defensive philosophy. So maybe just outline a little bit of the motion defense philosophy.
This is, I think anybody that watched our team through at any point throughout the run has a lot of questions about our defense. And if I could, tell you how many messages that we've received in support of our defense or certain questions about it, it's just been so humbling as a staff just to appreciate that so many people, I hear the comment all the time, playing it the right way, the full court, the aggressive, the go hard mindset. And I just, I appreciate so many people that have paid attention, that have found ideas within our defense that are like, hey, I've got a small team this year. I want to implement some of your ideas. Or how do you get your team to rotate? And just questions about our defense has been so appreciated by us. The hardest thing I always say is it's nearly impossible to talk somebody through in a, I don't know, hour conversation or a coach's clinic or anything like that. It's just read based and feel based and just off player strengths. And there's just so many different, I guess, intricacies of what the defense looks like and in certain moments, which I think is really helpful for us. That's what also makes it very difficult to scout. From one possession to the next, it could look completely different. Something that worked for us in the first two possessions of the game may not happen the entire rest of the game because either that opportunity didn't present itself or we had different lineups in or whatever the case may be. I guess that's a lot of why we call it motion, is it's so just like you would consider a motion offense, just movement based, reads based, players playing to their strengths, playing off one another, and just those ideas. We don't actually call our defense a press. I think a lot of times you think a man press or a zone press or a diamond press, and there's maybe some rules or concepts where you're going to trap the first pass or you're forcing it here, or some of those ideas. We still consider our defense a man defense. We still have player scouts and player matchups and those ideas. But also throughout the flow of the game, I'd be really interested to stat how much of the game our players are truly matched up with the player that maybe they were matched
I can
up
say
with.
from watching clips, it looks like not that often. There's
I
a
would say
lot of
that's
switching, a lot of
accurate.
interactions, a lot of like just common sense rotations. It was really good to watch.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's a majority of how we break down our defense is just it has very little to do with when the ball is inbounded and where our first line of our defense is. We almost always will start the ball at about a 3/4 court or just beyond half court or somewhere in that where we're maybe setting a scenario where this kid feels very comfortable. She doesn't have a lot of pressure on her. So now how can we initiate for the next action? Or we've got a trap going right here. What's our movement coming out of this trap? And what are our reads from there? And we'll try to just get our players to start anticipating. That's a word we use a ton, is the anticipation within our defense. And sometimes we say too, you're going to be dead wrong when you anticipate and it doesn't work well. And that's something we just have to try to eliminate the times where we miss on it. But at the end of the day, if you go hard, we're going to find a way to rotate off of you and we'll make it work the best we can. But anybody who's reactive in our defense, it just doesn't work. We have to have an eager and an aggressive anticipation for where we think the ball's going to go and beating the ball where it's going to get.
Maybe give us a picture, go back and say, how do you teach this to your players? That'll give us a better understanding of maybe what it is in terms of where do they have freedom to be able to go trap? Where do they have opportunities to go trap? And then obviously, when do they not? And you mentioned it being very scout based as well. So I'm imagining there's certain players that we don't want to leave and different things that way. So how do you build all that conceptually?
So quite honestly, I would say we spend in the early season, probably 90% of our defense just purely in half court, which my staff is always, we actually only spend about 10% of our possessions in the half court. But I do think the concept of how we call it peel and switch within our half court defense, how we anticipate to beat the ball there so we can apply great pressure. We don't de-slide in our defense. Everything is a run. Being able to turn your hips and run, to play long and wide, forcing the ball where we want it to go with the right amount of pressure that's not going to get you beat, but also is going to force the ball. And just all of the half court defensive concepts, I think, really apply into the full court with that same mindset of where we want the ball to go, turning and running, anticipating, all of that stuff. So we really break it down a ton in the half court. And then as we start to extend it into that full court, certainly we'll work with our first line defenders. And again, as we talk about it by being a motion defense, that could be any combination of players that are up there. We don't have a one who's on the ball, and then our two and our three are matched up with the next guards. A lot of times we really like different looks at it. Sometimes we'll put somebody on the ball. We'll call that our face option, where we want pressure on the ball, either because it's a team that will get the ball in and throw it right back to the inbounder, and we want to take that option away. So again, scout base there. Or if somebody's looking to really go deep on us, we let that ball pressure on. So that would be an option when we are in our face actions. If that ball's coming in and our face defender feels like we did a great job forcing that kid in and they can anticipate and they can be there on the catch, that would be a great trap zone for us. Again, just like that would maybe be more like a diamond rotation mindset. You'd put your next off-ball kid realizing, hey, do I need to go to the inbound? Reading the next action for how to rotate and play off of that. Mostly, I say we're a little different I've spent a lot of time this offseason watching other really good pressing teams, Glenville State, Marshall, a very similar defense, Drury, a lot of teams that have run a very successful press. And there's so many different ways to be successful in it, where I think like a run and jump, a lot of times you're going to run at the ball, inviting them to throw over, and then you get a rotation to the weak side. We'll get some of that, but I would say mostly we talk a lot about, we don't want them to see you come on a trap. So if they see you coming, that's probably not the time to go. We call it an engage. So we want to engage that dribble where we want them to think we're coming. We want them to feel some amount of pressure without the actual trap coming and opening up the next pass. So mostly like that, it's maybe more about the times when we don't want to trap, as opposed to these are good times to trap. There's always a good time to trap in our defense, unless they see you coming and you're coming from a long distance. Now, we have certain players who are really crafty at making a play if they see you coming. So again, that's where I say it's still motion based and reading each other's strengths out there. And this player is probably going to go for it, so I better rotate and cover hers, kind of thing.
That's such a great insight, really, is to teach them to trap, is to teach them when not to trap. And that makes so much sense. I've always said that with concentration, to teach them to concentrate, teach them when not to concentrate, because you can't concentrate all the time, just like you can't trap all the time. So I love that connection there. That's great phrasing. And then peel switching, you mentioned that. I know you said the opposite, but peel switching concept, which is usually a half court concept. And I noticed that when you guys play, they are running early, sometimes away. And I'm imagining, is that where they're getting turnovers? They're not getting turnovers as much at the point of the ball, but at the point of the pass from the ball.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. And we have to remind our team of that early in the season. They want to think we're going to force 24 turnovers a game, and it's got to all come from a steal. And we just remind our team, steals are great. We want to go for it. We want to anticipate and have that aggressiveness. But a lot of times just allow a team to make their own mistakes. They feel a certain kind of pressure because they're going faster than they feel comfortable, or they think the next line is coming over during that peel and switch. And now I want to get rid of it when now we've rotated to that next option. Yeah. And again, we peel and switch a ton in the full court when, maybe we went for a steal and now that ball is coming, we're on their hip. We're not in a good spot to force it to the sideline where we want it. Now we're going to get that second level to come over and push it where we want to, and just get our half court defense set in that peel and switch mindset. So like I said, it certainly is a half court piece that we extend into a 3/4 court, but really in the full court, we get a lot of peel and switches out there.
Coming back a little bit to the national championship game that you referenced, like watching your run through the tournament, you had a lot of close games, but the national championship game was a point that I'm sure for all of you, it felt like everything came together as you referenced, and you created 40 points off turnovers. That's pretty amazing at that point against that level of team, obviously, when you get to that point. So clearly, it's not just the tactical and the technical parts of the press, but it's the buy-in that your players from day one must really do that. So you can talk to us a little bit about that, not just your commitment to it, but the players' commitment to it.
Yeah, it is. That's everything. And I think if you look at our season last year, again, in a lot of ways, we weren't a surprise. Some people still called us an underdog throughout the run just because we were a 7 seed going into the regional and a 5 seed in the Elite Eight. But we were preseason pick number 2. So expectations were high. We weren't a true underdog who we had to work our way back into the top 25. We had dropped out. But I think a big part of that, we started the season 2-4. And certainly we had some injuries and things that hurt us. But I think a big part of it was the level of trust that you just referenced. And there was a lot of just trying to build the confidence back into our team that, hey, listen, number one, these teams that we're playing in the preseason are really good teams. they are very talented. So just because we didn't step on the floor and force 30 turnovers and win by 25 points, like they are good. They're going to handle our defense. They are talented across the board. We've got to feel confident that what we're doing is positioning us for where we want to be at the end of the year. We had to talk a lot about, just trust in each other. Believe that you can go for those plays because somebody's going to have your back in the next line of the rotation. And I think it was really valuable for me as a coach to go through that last year. And I think hopefully it'll be valuable for this team too, that last year wasn't just we were ranked number 2 at the beginning of the year and we finished number 1 at the end of the year and we stayed at the top the whole time. It wasn't always peaches and roses. We had some powwows in the locker room with a lot of tears of, listen, the way we're doing things right now isn't showing full trust in the system or in each other or in yourself. And you can't run this defense without that. We'll have to figure out a different idea of how we're going to try to make this work. But if we keep doing what we're doing right now, we're going to keep underachieving this year. And it's all going to come down to trust. And I think there were just some really real conversations and moments where I think everybody just looked in the mirror and was like, yeah, I didn't realize I was holding back. I didn't realize how selfish it was to not go for that steal and just to reshift that mindset of trusting that this defense will work if we all trust each other within it and trust ourselves within it. And then also a good reminder for me too, in a motion offense, it's hard to be outstanding opening week. You learn that trust, you learn how to make reads within your offense as the season goes. And that same thing happens with a motion defense too. And so it's hard to expect perfection opening weekend. There was just some good reminders with how important that trust is and how important just playing together and learning from each other is.
I love it. And obviously, you didn't mention that you were missing your All-American point guard for the start as well, which is a factor maybe, but it's awesome. The journey was the journey and you did it beautifully. And I'm going to come back to the motion offense because I enjoyed watching that as well and talk a little bit about that, but maybe get your opinion on a few specific challenges I find coaches when they reach out to me about pressing or different things like that, some common questions. And I would love to hear your philosophy. First of all, on the inbounder clearing out, what do you do on the inbounder clearing out situation?
And you're talking in the full court defense,
yes,
right?
Full court defense.
There's a couple reads now. If it's a post who's going to inbound and clear and not look for the ball, then we leave them. We hand them off to maybe our half court player and kind of, we call it zone up, either 3 players to our 1 or 3 players to 2, depending on how that looks. Now, if they clear and they're going to hold in the middle, we have a couple different options on if we're forcing sideline or if we're squaring up on the ball. And I think a lot of that for us is dictated on how much the team likes to dribble the ball against the press, because some people are very anti-dribble and they really want to pass through the press. And so different reads where if they're a little more passing, we like to force sideline and try to eliminate fewer options for the pass and see if we can't pressure them to maybe want to dribble up the sideline. If they're more of an eager dribbling team, then we like to square them off and invite them to want to dribble into maybe the next options where we can find a trap or make plays off of that. So if we're in a sideline, forcing up sideline, and they like to clear up the middle, that could potentially open up some opportunities for some traps off the inbounder player. I mentioned we do like to be on the ball a lot, but a lot of times we'll also go what we call a clog version, where we stick that player, instead of them on the ball, they're more at top of the key and they're clogging the center of the floor. They're a floating defender. If the player dribbles right away, they could go be a quick trapper. If a cutter cuts up the floor, they're going to eliminate any middle catches and then make reads from there. Do they stay up or are they clearing out the floor? And then we need to go with off of that. Again, it really is dependent on how eager the offense is to dribble, where we're forcing them to dribble. Are the cutters actually a threat off the catch? And then do we have a third line that could maybe take that cutter and we could stay up and try to keep the pressure in the backcourt?
What have you learned based on pressing about press break that can help us? Because again, being a master of the press helps you understand how to break things. So not to give away secrets about how to break yours, but maybe in generalities.
Yeah. Certainly I think being able to add variety in a press attack is important. Like I said, when we're scout based, we're trying to be, hey, they're going to clear that inbounder out. And then all of a sudden you get into a spot where that inbounder is hanging back and it's, whoa, wait, we're in clogger version. Now we need to get back up into face version. And it can allow or maybe catch the defense off guard, just as we want the defense to catch the offense off guard with different wrinkles that we're throwing. I think being able to have some different options in your pocket, obviously, the quicker you can get the ball inbounded, the quicker or the less time that the defense has to get set and find their rotations and make decisions from there. And so those have been ideas that we've tried to implement. Was certainly we don't want to inbound it quick into a trap zone or like that. We want to make sure that we're inbounding it up the floor. But if we can get it out quick, get it in quick, and then our hope is that we can try to break the press before the defense gets set, and then to be able to have different variations. Sometimes our post is taking it out, and now we're clearing them out. The very next, whatever dead ball will move to our point guard taking it out. We want to go back to the inbounder and just try to give ourselves things that maybe catch the press off guard or make the press have to try to rotate to what we're doing. So yeah, I think those are things that maybe having been on the defensive side of things, you learn how to help.
Well, to me, variability is what you said, and that comes through time and time again. And we just mentioned off air that we both have daughters around the same age, and I'm not sure if your daughters play basketball, but one of the things I watch all the time is this concept of breaking presses with all 5 of your players in the front court. And I've never understood that concept. And you must love seeing that as a defensive coach going, oh yes, take away your own space. And this 1-4 type of entry. So maybe talk to us about that and that kind of, because I've tried to convince coaches that it's not the way, but it's such a tradition, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. And again, I think there's still the dependent of what press you're facing. I think you've got to be mindful of how aggressive it is and, what the defense is looking to do. Because I think in some ways, when teams really clear out, that also doesn't hurt us a ton because they're non-options. We're going to put so much pressure on the ball, you won't be able to hit those open people who are too far away. We would be able to recover on the length of that pass, those ideas. But yes, certainly the more bodies that are up, that usually helps our defense find success because the passing lanes are so much more closed off. Dribbling lanes, like it almost feels like there's triple amount of people up there than there actually are, which obviously plays into the defense's hands.
Versus the 1-4 flat, then entry, do you allow it in and then take away space from there? Or what is the philosophy there?
Again, I think a part of it will depend on if they're dribblers or if they're passers, or if we're going to be on the ball, then we would probably likely let the ball come into the least threatening player and then take away cutters. And then when I say the least threatening player, that's probably somebody who doesn't want to dribble, maybe a post player or something like that. And then now they have to be the decision maker. Do I throw it to that cutter? Am I supposed to dribble? I'm not sure. I'm the person that's supposed to break this press right now. Is this in our best interest? That's maybe a scout-based rotation within it. Generally, again, we don't face guard a ton in our press. Like we like to throw that in as an option off of a made basket. Maybe you get up and face guard, but mostly we try to force that ball as low as we can and get it pinned to the baseline. And then now we can rotate and play off each other from there. But it does seem like even when a 4 cross press attack, a lot of teams, once it comes in, is going to try to slice people up the floor and cut them out and look over the top. And we don't want over the top. We'd rather keep it in front of us and make them feel like they have to go side to side where we could knife a passing lane or make a play from there.
Great stuff. And I guess the other common question about pressing is I don't have the right type of athletes, or I don't have the right personnel, or I don't have the right type of player. And to me, it's more of a mentality than a genetic profile. And I'm not sure how you feel about that, but maybe give us an idea of the different individual player strengths that contribute to success within your press.
Yeah, that's a great point. It is so much more a mentality than anything. I think, as you mentioned, we played a lot of players. Our All-American played 29 minutes a game, and that's pretty much over the course of her entire 5 years. I don't think she's played more than 29 minutes a game. We ask our players to go 2.5 minutes as hard as you can. And then we'll give you a quick break, and then we're going to get you back out there. But it's not about entirely the athleticism. Certainly, we feel like we've got really good athletes in our program, which helps us to be able to make a lot of the plays that we do make. But to that point of player strengths, we don't have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When our 5 point guard, All-American point guard was out, we started a 6-foot point guard. So very different in what their strengths are. So when Joey, our All-American, was out, we had Hannah in, and Hannah's length as the point guard and her ability to do some different things really changed what our other guards did off the ball. And so reading, like, Hannah's going to be able to stay in the play maybe a little more with a peel and switch. We don't need to switch so long because her arm length will keep her in the play. There's a lot of times where, our player that we like on the ball a lot, she is extremely explosive. She's so good at that engage that I told you about, where she just gets you, she puts pressure on without actually putting pressure on. She's just got this knack for making a player uncertain. Are you coming, or are you staying, or, oh boy. And if you come, she's going to come all out, and you don't want that. But if she's not going to come, then she can just read the ball so well. And again, I think that is where our players just start to learn to play off Destiny with, oh yeah, she's going. Now I know where my rotation is, or, oh, she's going to take that play away. Now I'm going to rotate off of her there. And I love that we have that variability with 2 point guards that are, one is ultra quick and so threatening, and the other is long and can knife passing lanes. We've got a player that starts in our 3 spot, but she could probably be anywhere from a 1 to 4. She's a 5'9", 5'10" wing, and really could play anywhere in our press because of her ability to stay in the play, to be long, and just do some different things in that. I think, again, that's what makes us so difficult, is when that ball goes through the hoop, one time it might be our 5'5" point guard that's matching up with the ball. The very next possession, it might be our 6-foot off guard that's on the ball. And you felt last time we were good getting the ball in bounds here, but now that's not working anymore. And just so many different player abilities out there that's what makes it so beautiful and so hard to scout. And just like we said all the time, player strengths, just play your strength. Don't try to be Joey. We don't need another Joey. We've got Joey where Joey's great. Now be the best Hannah. Do what Hannah does well, and let us all know that when Hannah's there, now we know how to play off of Hannah, and just try to love your own strengths and perfect those the best that you can.
It's hard enough in a short prep to get ready for your motion defense, let alone now trying to figure out defense versus 12 players that have obviously variable type of strengths and different things like that. So I can imagine the challenges are real for your opponent, and that's fun. And I also got to say, and I want you to talk about this, it was no surprise when I dove into synergy on offense, and you're not running highly structured sets. It just doesn't seem to go together in any way with your defensive philosophy to do that. So talk to us about your motion offense and some of the concepts that kind of drive that, especially in regards to spacing, the cutting. And then I saw some kind of wider screening type of actions, which I think really helped open up some driving lanes for your players as well. So maybe dive into that a little bit for us.
Yeah, I learned early on, I wasn't a big fan of dribble drive. Just really started to stifle the offense. And again, our All-American point guard is really good with the ball, and she's very quick. And we wanted to play to her strengths with the ball. But the more the ball was bouncing, the defense was shifting the same way we like to shift. And now it really limited our options. And the first thing that we are always looking for is get rid of it, advance it. We do not like the ball dribbling up the floor. 2 dribbles and get rid of it. And if we can't get rid of it, that must mean the defense is extremely high. So now we need them cutting through and opening up like a cut the court type look in the half court. And so to your point, it's almost, we want like a transition, like we just got a steal, even when we didn't get a steal. We want to beat maybe the first 2 lines if we can possibly just throw the ball over the top and get some sort of a 3-on-3 or even a 4-on-4. We still feel like there's advantage in spacing in that. A ton of advance, trying to really push that ball up.
And that applies to skip passes, because I saw a lot of skip passes. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. And we love, like I said, cutting the court or crossing the court. If we advance and you don't feel like, hey, there's a rim runner that was open, or I've got somebody on my hip and I'm gonna go to the rim, we want the ball to cut the court off the dribble or make the defense shift off of skips. So those are our initial actions to try to get us moving and get the defense breaking down early in the possession. So that's our primary actions. And then once we get into the half court, like I said, we have great penetrators. We're really explosive players, very talented at beating a player one-on-one and finding ways to finish off of that, but not big on a lot of dribble weave, dribble one side, dribble the other side, and try to get that action going. It's going to be so much more about, can we get a cutter through where that draws a lot of attention for the defense. If the cutters are open, obviously we want to hit cutters. But if the cutter isn't, then likely they've at least drugged one person or maybe drawn attention from two players. And now a cut the court might be open. Or off reversal, now we've got an ISO off of a reversal. Our dribbling rule is, hey, if you're going to put the ball on the floor, it better be because you're going north-south, you're going to score, or you're improving a passing lane, or you're getting that ball reversed. You're shortening it to get it reversed, and now we need our next cutter through, or a flasher. I think that's also been underutilized. That's where we really grow to throughout the season, is it doesn't always have to be block cuts for layups. A lot of times you might be cutting right into a help defender, but we really love flash cuts to second peg, free throw line, and then now you're in a tension spot where a lot of people draw attention there.
Especially when they're random like they are in that context. And it looked like in zone, especially, that was a big area of kind of emphasis to be able to get the ball in those flash cuts. It was really good stuff. And I want to just say, before you go on too, look, a lot of times when you run motion and it shows up on your video, is there's a lot of imperfect moments of space. But from that imperfection can become great opportunities, right? And I'm imagining that's a big part of what you're trying to teach them, is that can actually help them. That bunch spacing sometimes helps them.
Yeah, yes, we definitely talk about that a lot. Like on dead balls, when we have to run our motion and we didn't get an advance and we didn't maybe create something early, give me an overload. Give me some different looks. Like, don't be balanced. Balanced for us almost a lot of times is stifling. When we run our lanes, if we have four people on the left side of the floor, we don't cut somebody through. We stay all four on that unbalanced side. And now we look for the next action on an open side that might create something. Honestly, we don't love super conformity or balanced spacing. We want to create good opportunities to cut. So if it doesn't make sense to just stand next to somebody with the ball, then get through or find a way to space and move off of them. But ton of imperfection, which again is why it can take us a long time to really get a good flow for it. And I think the hardest part with this motion, where there's not a lot of continuity, there's not a lot of, the ball is here, this is where our cutter's coming from. Sometimes we can get overcutting. We can get three people that thought, hey, this is my time to cut. And now we don't have anybody to reverse it to, we're off balance. That can be a struggle that we hit at certain points throughout the season or in certain games. We also have certain times of the season where maybe the ball is getting stuck in certain spots. We dribble it to the corner and then it's stuck there, and now our cutters aren't great options. And we've got to find ways to eliminate those looks when it's just a part of the motion. And we try to have, like you said, a couple maybe sets that we call them, especially off those dead balls, because off the dead balls are the times when the defense is set and when we're trying to just make a cut happen early in the possession. But even our sets are usually either a quick hit that will get a defense chasing, and now it opens up those same cuts, penetration, kick out looks. We don't have anything that goes more than basically an action on one side. Once it gets over here, now we got to go make plays. Like, there's no whatever, shuffle, stagger away. Like, those aren't like the actions that we're looking for. And so, yeah, it just goes back to that. Be aggressive on defense to make plays. Be aggressive on offense. We're putting you in a spot where we know you are talented and you have a strength in that area. So make a play for us. It doesn't have to be you put your head down and barrel into the rim, but be a playmaker and let's get something aggressive out of it.
Speaking of that, are you attacking matchups? Are there any cues to be able to attack certain matchups, whether it's in the post or on the perimeter? Because it definitely seemed like your players knew how to get the ball inside versus certain matchups particularly.
Yeah, certainly that's things that we'll talk about, or especially if we're calling an action, it's like, all right, this is the time where we need to get that look right there, or this player's got foul trouble. Let's see what we can create off of that. I don't know. I think maybe we had 6 or 7 sets in by the end of the last season. It's not, I don't know. We didn't have a super like, oh boy, if this, then this, and try to get these things. But hey, we got Destiny cutting through off that first action. We know they're going to be a hard defend off that. If it's not there, off reversal, we got to clear out for Joey. Those two ideas for 2 players that are going to be really difficult to stop. So a lot of that kind of actions for sure.
How are you coaching them in practice? Because this very conceptual approach is messy in games. It's messier in practices. So talk to us a little bit about that process of what practice looks like for you, and then how do you coach it?
Like we talked about with our defense, where we're going to start the ball here, and this is the scenario, and this is how I need you to ready, go. The guy dribbles here, what are you going to do? And if they passed it there, what are you going to do? And start
Is
to
that
put
generally 5-on-5?
a lot of times it'll be 4-on-4.
Okay.
We may go 5-on-4 and say, hey, our teammate just got beat. We peeled and switched. They're out of the play. So now we're going to scramble through that scenario. But 4-on-4, maybe 4-on-5. And then depending where we're at in the season, maybe we'll add the fifth player trailing into the play.
I love this, by the way. This is, to me, is coaching, because you're putting them in the actual perceptual situations they have to figure out. So then after that, is the trip done, or are you playing multiple trips from that scenario? Talk to us a little bit about how you evolve it into this transition type of game that you play.
Yeah, a lot of times, like from a practice standpoint, if we're talking defense in those conceptual ideas, I think you probably heard of kills, coaches that encourage kills, the 3 stops in a row mindset. That is really big for us. We're very momentum based, and I think if our team, because we talk about short spurts, hey, 2.5 minutes as hard as you can go, let's make a goal happen in that short stretch. We're shooting for the 3 stops in a row. So our whole team, the whole bench will know where we're at in terms of that. On the floor, a lot of times we'll be dead ball and our players are looking over and is that 2 stops? We got 2. And so they're really engaged on where we're at with that. So often in practice, we'll keep a team in for 3 rotations and we'll see, all right, hey, that one didn't work. All right, how are we going to bounce back from it? Or whatever that looks like. But we like to try to put the same group in the same situation, but something different happened out of it. Instead of, okay, that one happened, rotate out, next group comes in and a completely different scenario happened. We're going to keep that group in. One possession, we got a trap. The next possession, we peeled and switched. The next possession, something completely different. And with the same starting scenario, we got maybe 3 different outputs from it. And then we'll rotate and get the next group in. That's a big thing for us on the defensive end. A lot of times we'll track it on a whiteboard of, hey, we only have 2 kills, but in the grand scheme of all of our possessions, the team, we didn't streak maybe 3 stops together, but the whatever defensive field goal percentage is really good. And we got to keep reinforcing the trust and the belief in what the defense looks like.
I love that. This concept of what I call bursts, which is they get multiple reps on offense or on defense in a row. It's a way to create variability without being repetitive, right? You're not doing the same repetition. It's going to be a different outcome every time because you're playing against an active offense or a defense. So I love that concept. Take us a little bit further and connect it for us with player development, because in all the articles and all the prep, it talked about how much you value individual player development and then obviously that connection to the team. So talk to us about that, please.
Yeah, I think that's something we've been really fortunate to have, is just a really hungry team, a bunch of gym rats. They understand that value. And I think that's something, again, as I talked about, like giving more downtime this year than in the past. We're really trying to shorten up our practices. And so we say a lot of times, this is your implementation. This isn't probably where you're getting better as a player. Hey, you're going to, because we have so many players and we have a scout team, really in call it an 1.5 to a 2-hour practice, you're probably only in half of that practice, right? It's not that our practices are intense and our players are working hard, so I'm not taking anything away from that, but a lot of our players will either request individual workouts, but we also get on a routine of, hey, this particular week, we're going to do group-based ones. Sometimes we're just going to catch different players after every workout or after every practice to just get 15 to 20 minutes of skill-based ideas in there. I've got an outstanding staff who is really passionate about player development. And I think that's also been a huge game changer for us, is just knowing individual strengths, but playing to their strengths and growing them as players is such a fine line. And we've really been able to take that. Again, Natalie Bramer, who was the MVP of the national championship as a sophomore last year, I was watching her work one-on-one with one of our assistants, Janae Morton, coming out of the conference tournament and going into the regional tournament on specific skill ideas. And then to have the confidence as a sophomore to go into the national tournament at the highest level against the best teams in the country and feel ready to use those skills at that level, that was a game changer for her confidence. She was unstoppable during that tournament. And I think a big part of that was just that time that she had been putting in. She was getting poured into by her coaches. She's watching herself see that success on film consistently, and then just feeling ready to implement that in big stages. I would say there's a certain amount of individual based work within that, but we also have what we call like our creators. Not everybody's a creator. Certain players aren't quite as comfortable putting the ball on the floor and making a decision for am I or should I or those kind of things. And we don't need everybody to do that. And so knowing what your strengths are and when is a good time to add some variability to your skill set, but don't be, what you're not out there either. And it's not just like everybody does everything. That's not going to get us where we want to get either. We got to grow our players, but just like on defense, play to your strength and do what you do.
Coach, so many insights. You're leaving us wanting to dive more and more into the video and learn more about everything that you do. But one thing you said really at the beginning, I want you to highlight a little bit more, because I think this is becoming more of a norm and more of a comfort level for coaches, is to be able to give players a day off. Talk maybe about that, and then maybe look forward to this season defending a national championship. Completely different experience for you and your whole team. So talk to us maybe about those two areas a little bit more.
Yeah, with the days off idea, early in the season, we initiate a captain's group. So probably not that different than many systems and programs with a captain's idea. Our goal with the captain's group, we like that to be anywhere from 4 to 6 players. So it's more of a group that has an impact from the inside and not just the best players or the hardest workers, but it's a wide variety of roles within that group. And we meet every week for at least an hour. And there, as that group comes in each week, we all do, and this includes the coaches, we all do a leadership evaluation from the previous week, where we're evaluating ourselves in terms of our confidence and our leadership. How hard did I work? Just a number of things there. And then there's also a lot of categories for where's our team at? Is our team feeling fresh? Is our team feeling confident? Are we focused? And just we're all going through that survey as an individual, then we come together and we look through that. And I think that has been very valuable as a coach and as a leader to just get a feel for, I don't have the answers. I'm not one of them. I'm not in finals week, or for me, traveling is very different than for them when they're missing class or other ideas that kind of go throughout the season. And so sometimes I can feel like, I don't know, they just look a little flat. But then I get 6 players on a survey and we're exhausted and we're stressed out and everybody's got a bunch of tests this week. And it's okay, yes, they are flat for a number of reasons and not just because they're not focused. And so I think that has been really helpful to give insight on where they're really at. And then when we meet early in the week, hopefully on Mondays in the morning, that's where I get a gauge for, okay, so what does this all mean? So this is a busy week. Are we going to be able to acknowledge that, talk about it as a team? Listen, guys, like we got a lot on our plate and we got long road trips and you got a lot of tests coming up. So we're going to have to be more organized and we're going to have to really be efficient in our practices so you have freed up time to do what you need to do. Or are we at that point where I just don't think it's going to be worth it? We're not going to get what we want out of practice. They're just going to keep getting more strung out and we just need to call it what it is, take the day off, and then be better in practice tomorrow. And so a lot of that is facilitated through our leadership group, and we trust that group has a great pulse for not, let's just take a day off, but what our team really needs in different scenarios. And so just giving them a voice, I think, has been really important. And again, just being ultra aware of structuring out our weeks. We're lucky we play Friday, Saturdays. Not many conferences do that. So we know Sunday is off. We know Monday is going to be a us-focused film day, skills day, Tuesday is us primarily, and then Wednesday, Thursday are scout focused. So we have a good routine with consistency. Once we get into our conference season, it allows us to structure how intense our day is and where we can back off throughout the week. But I do think just from the mental health, our players know what to expect as the week comes, and then just feeling like they can communicate with us when they're tough or in a tough spot. So yeah, I think that's been just the freedom to feel that, like just continuing to push through when we're not at our best is teaching us bad habits. We're better to just call it what it is and be fresh and get more out of it the next day.
I love it. You're holding space for your players. You're letting them obviously be active participants in the decision. And it's just great process. And then, so now defend the title. Let's go, coach. How are we defending the title? What's different now?
Yeah, if I had $1 for every person that's asked me about defending the title, I would, yeah.
Amazing how it heightens just people's perspective on things, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. And obviously that's the goal. We're really fortunate to be sitting here in a spot where we graduated 4 incredible seniors, 2 starters that were a huge part of what we did last year, but all 4 had a huge role for us over the course of their careers. And that's a big chunk of who we have been and what we've done over the course of our success over the past 3 years. But we also returned 10 players that were on our national championship team. As we talked about, we played 12 kids last year. We returned 8 players that were on the floor and getting experience throughout the season. And a lot of times you don't have both. You lose a big chunk. Now you're young and you don't have experience, but we have both. And so we're really excited to have that core returning. We have 7 newcomers coming in. It's like a turning of the tide in a lot of ways for us from a standpoint of we're going to go back to the basics and teach it like it's never been taught to anybody, just because there's so many newcomers coming in this year. But as our staff has really had our staff retreat the last couple of weeks and talking about things that we may want to gear more focus to on the defensive end or the offensive end, the majority of our time has really been focused on what's going to be our message this year. How do we not apply too much pressure to those returners that if you don't go undefeated, then it's a shame, or to these newcomers that when they signed or committed to us, we weren't national champs. And now I'm going to be on a national championship team. And how do I live up to that? And there's just a lot that goes with that. But I think the biggest focus for us, really even last year, when we started the year, we had a long discussion. Are we going to set goals? Are we going to sit here today and say, we're going to win the conference and we got to win the conference championship? And then what happens when we lose our first game? Do we lose and we just thought that goal that's not the setting that we want to do. We're going to play to a standard of Maverick basketball. And we have a series of statistics that we believe are finite. Hey, this shows what our intensity level was. And this shows, are we playing to our standard or not, instead of a feeling of, oh, that was good. We played well, or we got the win, or we won, but it wasn't great. We're not going to feel a certain way. We're not going to get too high or too low, but we're going to have a set of standards that help us reinforce where we want to be and if we're playing to where we want to get to. And that, I think, was what helped us just keep ourselves in a good, calm place through the entire run, was just staying to our standards. And I think that's our goal, to just continue to have Maverick basketball play to our standard. We would have never set a goal last year of winning a national championship. Those words would not have come out of our mouth if we were putting them on paper, and we could have sold ourselves very short on that. Every team, you can't put that on paper for. It's not always realistic. And so the goal setting piece for us we're not out here to defend a national championship. We're out here to improve Maverick basketball, to play to our standard. And if we do that, we really feel like we've got the pieces this year that will put us in place to win a national championship.
Love it, Coach. Congratulations on all your success, and big time thanks for you sharing the game with us and sharing your unique approach to all of your success. So we look forward to following your season this year.
Thank you so much. I've loved your podcast, and I love listening to other coaches and the insights that they bring. And I've got all my little sticky notes of ideas that I've taken from other coaches through your podcast. So I really appreciate what you're doing for our game.
Thank you.